friends. Hope you're doing well, and welcome to Popcorn Finance, where we discuss finance at about the time it takes to make a bag of popcorn, here live at FinCon in Dallas, Texas. And I'm joined today by two special guests this time. First time with two guests with me. I have Alex and Cassy. How are you two doing?
Doing well. Thank you.
This is the first time three people have been in this recording. So
Sweet. That's an honor.
And the great thing about having you two here is that you have a book that just came out, and it's called The 2% Rule to Get Debt-Free Fast. So would you mind telling us, I guess, a little bit about yourselves and then also about your book?
Sure.
So I'm Alex.
And I'm Cassy.
And we are the
Thrifty couple.
I know it's a little corny, but that's all right. So, but we actually say we're the thrifty couple, but we haven't always been thrifty. In fact, on our honeymoon, we had to get a loan to check out of the hotel.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really hard way to start our marriage. But that was just a beginning where we actually built up over the next 3 years over $108K of consumer debt. So if you look at that, you say, how are they the thrifty couple? Well, we were able to pay that debt off in just about 7 years.
Oh, wow. Very impressive.
Yeah, so it actually was a kind of in two stages that we paid off 108K. And the first was once we realized that we had a problem and we needed to pay it off, we began using like the crash diet approach, but to our finances and to our budget. And so what that meant was that we had created this perfect budget on paper, and we had slashed our expenses by 80% on paper, and it was beautiful. But we ran into a problem just within a couple of days because we had created something that was not ideal, something that was not realistic, and we kept falling off the wagon.
And so, so we found ourselves out one night trying to use coupons at a store, and we said, whoa, we have to get something to eat. So we ate out, fell off the wagon, and we said, well, we're going to start again next week. Well, this kind of process happened over and over each week, each month. And after 3 years, we did pay off $15K, but we looked at it after 3.5 years and said, we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So we kind of came up with a different plan and says, instead of trying to do this crash diet approach, let's do this a different way. And so we didn't know it then. We now call it the 2% rule, but we said, let's try a more gradual approach where we just each month just cut back a little bit, and each month let's try to bring in a little bit more income as well and apply that difference to our debt.
And part of the reason why we came up with that approach specifically is because not only did we struggle paying off $15K in 3.5 years, but the other thing is that we had come across others that had, if they successfully paid off their debt using the sacrifice and slash approach, they would find themselves to be back in debt in a very short time and repeating that cycle of getting in debt and getting out and getting in. And so we wanted to also find a way that made it sustainable, that dealt with the heart of the matter, that changed our lifestyle but wasn't such a, giant task that seemed impossible to do. And so we wanted to be able to have financial freedom for life.
I really like that. I like the idea of doing something gradually. And also the fact that you tried one thing, it didn't work, so you tried something else. Because I think there's this idea that, this is one thing that's going to work for everyone. And, it's great to try it, but if it doesn't work for you, modify it to make it fit your needs.
Yeah. So and that's what we're, hoping to do with our new book, is trying to bring hope to people that feel like they're lost in that cycle of continuously paying off debt, or that the task of paying off debt is just so overwhelming and so daunting.
Yeah.
So,
I think something we didn't quite share, we said 108K of consumer debt. It doesn't count the fact that we were fearful every time we picked up the phone, every time we answered the door, wondering if we were going to be served papers because we owed that money. So we lived in fear. We lived not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, having no idea that there was even a way out. And we were able to pay that debt off. In fact, with that gradual approach, we paid off over $90K in just 3 years.
Yes.
And so we're trying to really just share with other families that, we've been there. We know what it's like to have no hope. We know what it's like to just be frozen. But we want to share there really, truly is a way.
Yeah, there really is a light at the end of the tunnel. And what's so great about the 2% rule to get debt-free fast, once you're out of debt, you can use that same approach to tackle your mortgage and meet other financial goals, whether you have investing goals or business goals. We continue to use the 2% rule today to get to our next goal with our finances.
Oh, that's a great way to take what was a debt strategy and now make it into like a wealth building, a growth strategy.
Yeah.
Something to touch back on something else that you're both saying. the fact that you shared your story, and I think is a very brave thing to do, because I think there's a lot of stigma around people even acknowledging the fact that they have debt. But the fact is, the majority of Americans do have debt. It's just that we don't talk about it, so no one knows. What helped me and my wife, we had debt as well. It was hearing stories like yours and the fact that you were able to get out of it. It was very empowering and very encouraging to hear those stories, and it gives you motivation to say, okay, I know it feels impossible, but obviously it can be done because we have examples here.
Yeah.
You know something, you're right. We don't talk about debt. We don't talk about it. In fact, Cass and I, when we were, in that type of debt, even when we were living in that fear and the unknown, we didn't even talk about it at that point. We didn't talk back and forth in many ways because we still didn't want to be the one that was going to say, no, let's stop spending right now.
Yeah.
And we just got to a point where we knew we had to do that. But there are so many that just don't talk about the problem of debt.
Yeah, no, not at all. So thank you. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, and we actually deal with that in our book, the communication factor, because that is a very big thing, how to get your spouse on board.
Yes.
And what we have found too is with the 2% rule, it's actually been much easier to get the support of a spouse, because you're not telling your spouse, we have to cut out absolutely everything in life and pay off this debt first. But instead it's like, hey honey, we can just make little changes here and there and see success. And so it's a much easier way to get, those reluctant spouses on board.
You know, it's funny because I was going to tell that story. So that's not fair.
I beat you to it.
But
yes.
because I was that spouse. I was that spouse that when Cassie came up to me, we both knew something had to happen. Because it was when we found out we were expecting a child. And said, it's one thing for me to be in that situation. It's something else for myself and my wife to be in that situation. But it's really something else when we're bringing a child into this life.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was that spouse, though, that Cassie says, let's slash that budget by 80%. And I'm like, you're talking about my whole lifestyle here. But when we're talking about that gradual change, all of a sudden, it's like, you know what? We were able to talk through it, able to discuss. Here's what's important to us. And we were able to find places that, as a couple, that we could feel comfortable cutting. And that really helped us to get to the next step and the next step and the next step. And all of a sudden, we found other spouses that, this really helps them overcome that communication barrier, because now it's not someone going to be locking down on someone else, but say, here, how can we walk together and do this gradually? And it goes down much easier. It's like a spoonful of sugar, just different, right?
Exactly. No, I definitely agree with that. And the last thing I wanted to ask you just to give everyone a concrete example of some of the changes you might have made is since the rule is, you're cutting 2% and you're while also increasing 2% in earnings. Could you give us an example of both of those things? Or?
Sure, yeah. So I know for one of this is going to sound really funny and maybe a little, odd for a couple with a baby, but the very first month that we wanted to increase our income, we're not talking about going into your boss and asking for a raise, because that's not going to happen. No. But rather finding side hustles and things you can do on the side. And so we actually tell the story in detail in our book, but we actually started by delivering newspapers. And I know that sounds crazy, like a job that a teenager takes on, but it was $400 extra each month.
Wow.
And we could do it in the morning before Alex went to work for his day job. And it was a huge blessing to us then. Looking back on it and after calculating how much we made $3 an hour. But it was a start. And what was amazing is we were able to go off of that and make more later on.
But what Cassie also didn't share too there is not only was it her and myself, but we also had a 6-week-old baby.
Yeah. Wow.
So we were taking at 4 o'clock in the morning, putting that baby into a car seat in the back of the car, and we were going out delivering those newspapers together, but we made it work.
We did.
But one thing I was going to say, you asked for an example both of the increase but also the decrease. One thing we encourage families to do is to go into their budget, go into their bills, and find those, what we call them, the head smack charges. Those charges where you signed up for something maybe 6 months ago, but you're still paying for it even though you don't use it. Or, other charges like that. And all of a sudden you can find maybe 1, maybe 2, and all of a sudden that could be your 2% right there.
Yeah.
And so it's just going in and being smart and starting off at those very low-hanging fruit, we call them, and just start there. And then each month, they're just getting better and better.
Yeah, and you come up with more creative ideas, and you find better ways of saving money, better ways of making money. At the end of our 3 years of paying off $90K, the last year we actually called it our $50,000 year because we paid off $50,000 of that remaining $90,000 in that last year.
Wow.
And it was just because our 2% increase had become much greater over that time to allow us to do that, all from side hustles and doing side jobs and different things. So.
Oh, that is. I think that's a great story and a great way to show these gradual changes you can make without like just completely destroying your financial life, turning it upside down, and like freaking out.
Exactly.
So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
So Alex, Cassy, if you could just, if there's anything you'd like to talk about before you go, and if you could also let us know where to find you, it'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate it. So, yeah, we're on Twitter at Thrifty Couple, on Facebook, The Thrifty Couple, and we just really encourage you to, just keep it up, be a family, work together, and find a way, because there really truly is a way.
Yeah, and you can find the 2% rule to get debt-free fast on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and anywhere else where books are sold.
Okay, great. It's a great cover too. I really like the look and feel of the book too. So
Yeah, it feels nice.
All right, so thank you again.
Thank
So
you.
great having you here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
I just want to say another big thank you to Alex and Cassy from the thriftycouple.com for stopping by and spending a little bit of time with me at FinCon in Dallas, Texas. It was a lot of fun talking with them, so please make sure you keep up with what's going on with them and their new book. And as always, I appreciate you listening to the show. If you enjoyed what you heard and you want to hear more, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on the Google Play Store, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. I'm there, so yeah, please check it out. And if you want to keep up with what's going on with the show, any new developments, any new things I have going on, you can follow me on Instagram at Popcorn Finance Podcast and on Twitter and Facebook at Popcorn Finance. And as always, I appreciate you spending some of your time listening to the show. I know there's so many other things you could be doing with your time, so I appreciate you spending a little bit of that here with me. Hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon.